Hi everybody, how are all of you doing? Psalm 16 and verse 2 says, "You are my Lord, apart from you I have no good thing." David is saying that there's no other treasure than God's presence. That means that God is your greatest treasure. Suffering will make us run into the presence of God. Suffering and pain will always transform us. While they sometimes unravel us, they also push us into a deeper, intimate relationship with God. Two things about the presence of God in our lives. The Lord's presence means that His purposes for your life will be accomplished. The Lord has a plan for each one of us. That plan is to use your life for His glory. Second is, the Lord's presence also meant that He always gives you evidence of His watchfulness over your life. Genesis 28, "I'm with you, I will protect you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I've done what I promised you." God's presence always brings tremendous blessing. We see this. It is really true in Joseph's life. In Genesis 37, we read about a 17-year-old teenager by the name of Joseph. He was a favorite son of Jacob and his beloved wife Rachel. Joseph, a dreamer and interpreter of dreams, is the son of a dreamer. Hence, it's no surprise that he is Jacob's favorite son. Jacob dreamed of a stairway reaching to heaven with angels going up and coming down. When Jacob wrestled with God, he was in a dreamlike state too. Joseph's dream was for every one of his family to give him homage. The presence of God in Joseph's life enabled him to exhibit a few qualities of a leader. The first attribute was he was a man of principles, a man of character and integrity. He was honest. Even though he was tempted many times, he withstood them and remained faithful. God allowed Joseph to be tempted, mistreated, forgotten, to develop him and refine him into a godly man. The reason why Joseph was able to maintain his integrity was because he was not concerned about what man thought about him. He also did not consider the benefits or the consequences of his action based on what Potiphar, his master, might do. Notice what it says. "How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" His main concern was what God thought about him. He understood that he was accountable to God and that the fulfillment of his dream was dependent upon God. The second attribute was discipline. Joseph was under the same pressure that we face today. He was probably a handsome man with sexual needs, but no obvious prospects of having a wife because he was a slave. He was far from home, and no one was ever likely to find what he did. Joseph lived a God-dependent life. He lived in the midst of great adversity. Through good times and bad times, we too learn God accomplishes His purposes in our lives. The third attribute was competence. Joseph did his job with excellence, whether as a servant or an interpreter of Pharaoh's dream, or the second man in command. He believed God has destined him for greatness. By way of his dreams, God assured Joseph that he will rise to a position of leadership. From Joseph's point of view, these dreams were evidence of divine blessings rather than his own ambition. Do your best. Work from the heart for your real master, for God, confident that you will get paid and you will step into inheritance. The fourth attribute was wisdom. God's presence with Joseph was so obvious that Pharaoh promoted Joseph to second in command in Egypt, especially to take charge for the preparations for the coming 7-year famine. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has revealed the meaning of the dreams to you, clearly no one else is as intelligent and wise as you are. You will be in charge of my court, and all my people will take orders from you. Only I, sitting on my throne, will have a rank higher than yours." God blessed Joseph so that all the families of the earth will be blessed. Joseph's promotion brought him significant accessories of leadership: a royal signet ring and gold chain, fine clothing appropriate to his high office, official transportation, a new Egyptian name, and an Egyptian wife from an upper-class family. If ever there was a lure to leave his Hebrew heritage behind, this was it. God always helps us to deal with failure and defeat, yet we need his help more significantly when we deal with success. In the wisdom of God, Joseph had management skills which he developed in Potiphar's house. He had engineers and architects to build storehouses to prepare for famine, even though it was years away. The fifth attribute was humility. He demonstrated his trust and dependence in God by stating, interpreting dreams is God's business. Go ahead, tell me your dreams. God can use the events of our lives, even our struggles that we are facing right now, to teach us humility. When we fail and when we suffer, we realize our own limitations. But through Christ and Christ alone, we can do all things. Joseph handled his promotion with humility. When he named his sons, they were Hebrew names. Manasseh, because God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household. And Ephraim, because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. In his humility, Joseph showed grace and mercy to his brothers, even though they sold him into slavery. The multiple wrongdoing of others in Joseph's life and the circumstances that followed did not interfere with the sovereign purpose of God. Rather, God used them to accomplish his purpose. God was there, acting on his behalf and orchestrating blessings behind the injustice. When his brothers feared revenge and vengeance from Joseph because of what they've done to him, Joseph said, "Don't be afraid. Am I in a place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then, don't be afraid." The circumstances of your life should not weaken your faith, but mature you to become the men and women of grace and character that God desires. If Joseph can do it, so can you. Recognize and acknowledge the fact that God is with you and that you are blessed, anointed, and highly favored. Serve others with your heart as unto the Lord. Eradicate murmuring and complaining and replace them with praise and thanksgiving, knowing that God will complete what he has begun in your life. My heart and my flesh may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. Amen. The Lord bless you.